Hey guys, this is Lucid, and we have a new Dominions intervention for you. This one is going to be with Vaettiheim, which is one of the newer nations. I think I did a patch notes when it came out and talked about it briefly, but I haven't done a national overview. And as is tradition when we do an intervention video, we'll talk a little bit about the nation, kind of national overview style. After we have taken a decent look, it's not going to be a full national overview. Then we're going to take a look at kind of where this player is in terms of research, armies, how big they are. And then we're going to talk about research targets, because that's always a really important thing. Then we'll take a look at all of his neighbors and talk about national matchups. And then we'll kind of end by talking about late game Vaettiheim and what late game Vaettiheim can look like. So with that, let's hop into it. Before we get into all of the details on the kind of brief national overview, this is a pretty good position. It's turn 35, and I think they have like 35 something provinces, so pretty solid position. The landscape's a little weird though. We'll talk about that as we get to it. Anyway, here we go. And they've conquered Bogarus, who is defeated. Coming down here to Vaettiheim. So let's talk about them. This is going to, as I said, be a brief national overview. Vaettiheim is one of the kind of like Neefel-themed nations, but it's kind of all of the little Vetti, the goblins. And they have a very strong preference for cold. They get to cast Illwinter. They spread cold, as does Niflheim. And most of their units, or a lot of their units, are size 1. And that is really, really good for a lot of different things, though it also has kind of weaknesses. So, yeah, let's talk about it. We're going to go through the commanders first. First, there is the Vetti Gaija. And the Vetti Gaija is water, death, nature, and it gets a random for water, astral, death, nature, and blood. These are going to be the main paths of kind of... These are going to be the paths that basically Vaettiheim's going to get. And there's a lot of things that the Vetti Hag can do that the I'm sorry. There's a lot of things that Vetti Gaija can do that the Jotun Gaija can just do better. Because you can see they basically get the same paths. They're just going to be a bit deeper, and they're a better chassis. So I'll spend most of my time talking about all the things they can do with the Vetti Gaija, but then we'll shift over and talk about the Jotun Gaija later. So, anyway, without further ado, what are all the things we can do? Well, these are actually pretty good cross paths. These are really good cross paths. Nature water means you can do Moss Body. It also means with the Thistle Mace or with the Nature Random, you can do Foul Vapors. And this is on a pretty cheap chassis, which means like you can potentially do lots of Foul Vapors traps, especially if you have quite a few in randoms. Yeah, like I said, Moss Body. You also can get water too. Well, I'll get into a lot of the detailed fluffing later. But the other important cross path you have here is death and water. And because you have an astral random, that means you can potentially get very high death and water. And what that means is you can potentially do all of the high-tier death water stuff in combat, which is basically like Stygian Rains. There may be some other things too. But that can be really nice if you want to do an evocation rush. And you have guys with magic weapons. So anyway, that's something to consider. It's something you could do. Yeah. Then we'll get into talking about some of the things that we can do here. We've got blood in here, and our blood and astral, so almost 2/5 of them can hop in a communion, right? Blood is going to be maybe a bit more tricky than the astral, just throwing them in a communion. But like almost half of these guys are communion masters of slaves, right? And that's a lot more than 1/5, right? 2/5 is way more than 1/5 for the math majors out there. Yeah, you want to use both these guys. The important thing is, because you have enough of these guys that can jump in communions, you can actually do pretty strong magic. If you're fighting an Astral Nation too, you can decide to only do Sabbath, like Sabbaths, and just skip on the Astral, but that's going to kind of cost you if you, um, you're not going to have as many Communion guys. And that's something we'll talk about later. I think that's actually going to be applicable to one of the matchups. The other thing is, we've talked about how we can communion up. The water randoms, they can do quickness or quickening later in the game. And one thing I should just mention now about Vaettiheim is, the other thing they're size 1 guys. Many of them can stealth, which is something I forgot to mention earlier. But because they're size 1, they take point buffing very, very well. So things which are normally kind of like meh, like Quickening, which is a high tier alteration spell, but you need to be water 2 to cast it and have a gem. These guys with like a water lens and just a water lens can drop it, right? And then every fight, you have a few of these guys with water lenses just dropping Quickening on all of your dudes. It can be gnarly. It can be very gnarly. The nature randoms, they can do mass protection. The death randoms, they can do Horde of Skeletons without really much further assistance. Yeah. They're pretty solid. You can also do, and this is something you don't want to forget, you can also do Elemental Fortitude on all of these guys, which is going to be important if, there's going to be battlefield wipes coming out. That could be the difference between them making it or not. In terms of the chassis itself, it's stealthy, which can be nice. It means you can potentially even have major armies with major mage support going completely invisible. So that's definitely something. And they're old, as are the Jotun Geiges too. So the Jotun Geiges, we'll just come over to them real quick. They are pretty similar. They lack the base water path, but they gain blood. What that means is every single Jotun Gaija is going to be able to jump in a Sabbath Communion. And that is, I think, more than anything else, what justifies the higher price tag in my book, like why I would get them. I think they're cap only too. Yeah. They also are going to be your higher access to paths. You're not really going to get Water 3, so don't count on that. But you can potentially get Astral 2, which I think is your highest Astral. You can potentially get Death 3 and Nature 3. And if you recruit these constantly, you'll probably get at least one Death 3 and probably one Nature 3. You can also get a Blood 3. So these are your ticket to kind of higher magic paths in the schools you normally care about. But in terms of like being a battle mage, if you throw them into Sabbaths, they're going to be pretty solid. And then okay. Well, some of you thought I skipped over one of the most important things with the Vetti Gaija, but I didn't. I was like, when these guys got released, or the Twiceborn patch got released, I was like, in the first wave of guys thinking about how to blow that up with these guys. So yeah, these guys can abuse Twiceborn and Transformation. The way you do it is Twiceborn now is based on size in terms of its cost. So what you can, and there are better Twiceborn chassis if you're size 6. So what you can do, especially this works better if you have luck, you Twiceborn while you're size 1, then you do Transformation until you hit size 6, and then once you hit size 6, you suicide them. Some other perks of doing that are that, you can keep getting Magic Pass from all of your transformations too. But if you get unlucky, you can also get Foul Spawn. So, anyway, that is a thing. Coming over to our final, but not least, Mage. These guys are foreign recruit in forests. So all you need is a lab in a forest, and you can kind of spit these guys out. If you have magic scales, which this player does, these are actually pretty good researchers. Because they're super cheap. They're only 40 gold. And they come in a few varieties. Water 1, Astral 1, Death 1, Nature 1, and Blood 1. These are really useful paths to only have one in, compared to like something like Earth on a non-thug. Like Earth 1 on a non-thug is not super great often, compared to like Earth 2. But, Water 1, you can spam Frozen Heart. Having a 40 gold Frozen Heart spammer, not bad at all. Astral 1, 40 gold for an Astral 1 is phenomenal. 40 gold for a Death 1, this one's kind of meh. But, he can still make a fair amount of skeletons in one combat if he's left undisturbed. But yeah, that's probably the most meh. And then a 40 gold nature one, pretty freaking good. You can do swarm spam and things like that. That's basically the main use of nature ones. Swarm kind of got nerfed, so it's not quite as good as it used to be, but it's still pretty solid. You can do major distractions with these guys. Have like 5 of them with 10 gems total, so like 2 per guy. And you're going to be getting a lot of swarm casts in. And then Blood 1 is phenomenal. These guys are going to be like your default Blood Hunters, but yeah, you can do other stuff with them too. And Blood's really important for Vaettiheim, if you can't tell kind of what I'm saying already. We also have Stealthy Commanders, and in terms of the units, we're going to go through these kind of quickly. We have this guy, the Jotun Axeman. You can only get him in the capital. They're okay for expansion, but I think you'll probably use other things. You have the Jotun Hurler, which is just huge bang for your buck. These guys are 10 siege strength each, or almost 10. So, yeah, 10 of them is going to cost you 300 gold, but it's going to give you 100 siege strength. So, that's pretty good. Definitely don't forget about the Jotun Hurlers. Next up, we have the Moose Rider. These guys have a crossbow and a short bow on a good chassis. You know, the nice things about this are they may potentially be good in expansion. I've never tested it. They're stealthy. It's a pretty good bang for your buck in terms of crossbows and short bows. Like 25 gold for both these is not bad. And then there are no slouches in melee. So I think this is a solid unit. It gets major problems later, though. Like, once Charm or Soul Slay and stuff come out, these guys are going to be dropping like flies. Or there's, like, any battlefield, like, MR targeting stuff, these guys are in trouble. Like, 5 MR is terrible. Terrible. And because they have a high HP pool, all the things that target MR are going to, like, focus right on these guys, and they'll get yoinked. I can't give you a good assessment of exactly how good they are. Because I've not really seen them used in games. I don't think looking at them they're like horrible. It's not setting off my horrible detector. And I could see them being pretty good. But I'm also like, they have a pretty huge weakness, which is MR. If they didn't have the MR thing, it would be kind of better. But even then, like the short bow's not great in the late age. The crossbow's nice, but it's also low damage. It doesn't get the strength bonus. And you can't buff up the strength bonus. So these are kind of weaker ranged attacks. And in late age with a ton of armor, I feel like it's kind of meh. But, you know, I could totally be wrong. Anyway. And it's possible they're okay for expansion too. Probably not. I don't know. I'm totally open to be convinced. I'm just kind of ignorant on that. Next up, we have the Rim Vetti. These guys are kind of badass. They're 24 gold. They're sacred. They're cap only. They have cold power and ice protection too. Ice protection 2 means you're going to go up to 20 protection because you have 0 base natural protection. All this is from armor. And ice protection applies to armor, not to natural protection. And so when you're in cold 3, you're going to get 2 times 3 equals 6 additional protection. Jumps you up to 20. That's huge. Cold power plus 1 means you're going to be getting 3 additional strength, attack, and defense in cold 3 too, which puts you up at a whopping 18 defense and 15 attack and 13 strength, which means these are now 15 damage ice blades. And they're stealthy, and they have chill aura. And with 6 of these guys in the square, chill aura is going to just burn people around them. These guys are super good. I love the Rim Vetti. They're really, really good. And they take point buffs super well, because they're like a super solid unit. But now you have to imagine them with like Moss Body and Body Ethereal, and quickness on them, and then it's like, okay, these guys are little fucking murder machines. So anyway, that's the Rim Vetti. They're kind of cool. Let's see what bless we got. I kind of forget. We've got Fire, Shock, Defense plus 2, and Reinvigoration plus 2. Not bad. I approve. Okay, here we go. So next up, we have the Wolf Brother, which is a slightly better statted and more expensive version of the Wolf Rider. Which one's better, I'm not totally sure. I know you can expand with these guys like crazy. They have pretty good map move, which means you can sometimes pretty often get a 2 move with these guys. And with 2 attacks, they tend to do okay versus PD. I don't know. I haven't really played a lot of the Jotun nations, really, ever since in multiplayer. But I've heard stories of people getting like 30 or 40 provinces. Maybe it was in Middle Age or something, using these guys as expanders. So, anyway, they're definitely good stealthy raiders too. There's probably some finesse in figuring out how much is required to kill stuff. Anyway, solid units. Next up, we have the Vetti Berserker. These are recruit anywhere, and they're possibly kind of some of the cooler units that you can get with Vaettiheim. They are size 1, so you're going to have 6 of these guys in a square. So that's 6 21 damage attacks per square. They have Berserker +2, which is not great on a low HP chassis because they have to get hit for it to trigger, and then if they get hit, they're probably going to die. If you can get Fog Warriors on these guys, it's phenomenal, though. The other way to trigger it is you do Growing Fury at the beginning of combat. Now, the downside of that is it's going to potentially send some of your mages to be Berserk. So anyway, that's the downside. But the upside is that if you have a bunch of Vetti Berserkers, it's going to automatically trigger Berserk, and then they're going to go ahead and get the +2 strength, +2 attack, -2 defense, I think, is how it works. Yeah, and that's going to make a pretty big difference. This is a 2-handed weapon, so they're going to get a bit of a bonus from the strength. I think this will kick them up to like 24 attack damage. And 12 or 14 attack. These guys will chew things up. Anyway, it's going to be situational. If you're relying heavily on mages, I probably wouldn't do it. But if your mages are just going to get some important buffs off, you'll probably be okay dropping Growing Fury. And that really makes these guys rock out with something out. Next we have these guys, who are Bodyguards, which can be pretty good if you're dealing with Assassin Cheese. Though honestly, Bodyguards are never the best way to deal with Assassin Cheese. There's like better ways, like, I don't know. We're not going to go into an anti-assassin strategy. But anyway, you have Bodyguard guys. They have a bit of cold resistance. Almost everybody has a bit of cold resistance. And almost everybody is stealthy. Next up, we have the Spearmen. Nothing too much to say about these guys. And they have a shield and a spear. I'm out of nice things to say. Next up, we have the Vetti Crossbowmen. They have a crossbow, and you'll notice this is a lot more damage than the Moose crossbow. It's because they get a bonus from strength. And, yeah, 7 gold for a crossbow. It's freaking huge, right? And additionally, with size 1, they're going to be able to take kind of better point buffs. So that's a thing, too. We don't have great point buffs for crossbows on this nation, I don't think. We don't have really great strength buffs or anything like that. But anyway, if you choose to point buff them, you can. Especially if you luck into some Earth Mages or stuff. Like Strength of Giants will just cover a huge amount of these and really kick up the damage some. Anyway, they're stealthy crossbows for 7 gold. What more do you want me to say? That's a pretty good crossbow. We have the Vetti Spearman. These guys are stealthy. I don't know. They have a spear and a shield. And these guys, hatchet and a shield. I'm skipping over some of these. Look, there's a lot of different Vetti. Alright, and you'll have to figure out which ones you like best for things like expanding and raiding. If I ever do a full national overview, I will of course have more detailed opinions on that. But for like mid-game combat and stuff, the Vetti Berserkers are awesome. These guys have probably a decent place. The crossbows have a decent place. And the wolves are going to be decent for raiding. The Rim Vetti are good, and these guys are great for sieging. Right? So that's my short summary of the troops. With that, we'll take a look at this position now. So like I mentioned, it's pretty big. They had a successful war where they partnered with Ulm to destroy Bogarus. They now have these big armies up here. Some of these things, like just looking at it, okay, let's talk about naps real quick before I start kind of flying with some commentary. I think there's a nap with Patala, there's a nap with Tianchi. Midgard, there's no nap, and Midgard is completely unresponsive diplomatically. And I think they have a nap with Atlantis, but I'm not sure. Yeoman is in this little lake of theirs, completely cut off, so they're almost certainly building a fort in here. That would not make me happy. That would make me think Yeoman's going to want to attack. The problem is Yeoman doesn't really have a great land passage to attack without going through Utgard or Atlantis. And I'm not sure how he's going to get his Ryujin out of here that he's building in the underwater forts. Anyway, not sure. I potentially, if I didn't have anything better to do and I could just sit here and defend, I would kill these guys. But if I'm about to go off to another war, I probably wouldn't want to piss off Yeoman. But, yeah, I don't know. Well, he can't move an army through here. He can definitely attack with Ryujin all up in here. So, anyway. But that may be coming anyway. Like, kicking him out of this lake will potentially make him give up his dreams of attacking you here. Like, so anyway. That's a quick overlay of the diplomatic landscape. Because he expanded in this direction, he's a little bit kind of drawn out, along this diagonal. Now, when I'm in a position like this, I'm drawn out on a diagonal, I normally want to attack inward, right? So like either Atlantis, but going underwater, probably not going to happen very well, right? Or going this way into Patala or Tianchi. The problem going into Tianchi is we could move an army through here and attack this way, but we don't really have an easy way, especially with cold, these mountain passes are going to be shut down. With cold, we may be able to cross here. But it's a pretty choke-pointy war into Tianchi. And Tianchi has pretty good... It could work. This is definitely an option, attacking into Tianchi, but it's not super ideal. Next up is Patala. Patala is very good in the late game, but they're kind of janky in the mid-game a little bit. So... yeah. We'll talk about kind of the matchup. They're a decent target. There's a lot of nice things that come with eating Patala. The not nice things are you're going to have a lot bigger coast with Atlantis. And we're going to come back and hit on this in more detail. But I just want to give you a quick lay of the land. And now we're going to start talking about some of the... this is his biggest army. And you can see it's a bunch of Rim Vetti. The formations here, not super great. Let's see. Do we have? I think we have an 80 leadership dude. 40. Oh, we don't. Oh God. All right. So apparently this nation doesn't get 80 leadership dudes. So what I would recommend, since we don't have 80 leadership dudes, is splitting these guys up. You don't get a morale penalty, but you get a bigger front line. Yeah, so just splitting these guys up. Skirmish formation probably for the archers, right? That's going to make you less vulnerable to ranged attack. Just generally splitting your dudes up. Having these guys in huge blobs is not super great. This is like a small critique, though, compared to the big critique, which is... there's no mage support for this army. One of the things that I think is a mistake people make often, like a lot of players make often, is they think that big armies, like, oh, look at all the units I have, and I've got these really good Rim Vetti, and I've got, my prophet to bless them. Like, this is a really strong army. Good players are going to look at this army and say, holy shit, this is like 4,000 gold I can just wipe out, right? Because there's no mage support. And the thing is, you need your mages to protect your armies, right? Like that. I think that's a good way to look at it. Like, armies are major investments. They take a long time to build up. You need a lot of resources. It's not even just the gold, right? And if somebody comes and kills it, then all of a sudden, like, you're not able to attack and kill anybody. And like, let's say Utgard, you don't have a nap with them. And I could be a little bit wrong on the Diplo, but let's say they have a god that can magic phase attack. They could just magic phase their god on top of this. There's no Dominion here. And they would just kill everything, potentially. Right? Like a teleporting supercombatant would completely wreck this. So, now that said, Vetti are very scary because of being size 1 to supercombatants and thugs. Like, you know, and especially with some crossbows, they're pretty scary, right? So I don't want to give the impression that like this is super easy to kill with a super combatant or thug. It would definitely murder thugs, but a super combatant like a pretender god could definitely kill them, and potentially even Scrotty could kill them. Like very well fluffed and kitted Scrotty could kill these guys. So anyway, if you're going to be moving an army around like this, you need to have mages protecting it, even if you're not at war. Like right now, he's not in an active war. If you just need to like take a province back or something, then like send a small group of dudes to take it back. Like don't move a whole army, because like people, you may think, oh, I'm going to be safe and move a whole army. Moving a whole army is a major commitment, and it's not safe unless it has mage support. Okay, we've covered that. Anyway, that's where most of the troops are. He's got a small contingent of troops down here, taking this fort from Ulm. This is not a war. They've agreed to trade some provinces around, etc. I can't remember which one Ulm's getting in return, but he's doing a little swapperoo with Ulm. So anyway, he's also got a big army down here and a lot of mages in this area. You know, a decent-sized army here. So anyway, that's what's going on over here. Now we're going to talk about research. What I want to focus on when we're talking about the research is what is the research we can get that is going to allow us to win major conflicts or defend ourselves, right, in the near term. It's turn 35 and we have 1,500 research per turn. That is huge. That is like off the charts huge. And a lot of this is because he's getting foreign recruit Vetti hags in the forests, right? So yeah, anyway, RP is phenomenal. If he's not number 1, he's like number 2 or 3 in research. But he definitely could be number 1 with this higher research. So his research is really good. Major strong suit. He's going up blood 7. Now, you only need blood 6 to get Illwinter and Winter's Call. Blood 7 is more to get things like Blood Rain, Father Ill-Earth, and then potentially Archdevil and Curse of Blood. So there's a few things to get here. I'm not really sure which... I'm not sure if it's worth it, because these really aren't going to win you a war, I don't think. If we go all the way down to Blood 8, Rush of Strength and Life for Life are really good. But anyway, he's already almost there. So it makes sense to finish it at this point. But I think this is a little greedy going for this. But on the other hand, his research is so high that we're going to hit all the other targets we need to pretty soon. So right now he's got Alt 6, Evo 3, which I think is just for Sight Searching Astral, Construction 6, Enchantment 5, Thom 1. And let's talk a little bit about what the research targets should be. The first thing we're going to pull up is Enchantment. Going up to Enchantment 6 is going to give us very, very big things. It's going to give us Aerofend, which is a little tricky for us to cast. We don't have any air mages right now, so that's a small problem. But we're going to have a way to potentially get around this. Once Illwinter goes up and we start getting Neathful Jarls, we can blood empower them and then put them in a communion, and then they can do Aerofend for us. Right? It's a little janky, but we can do it. And if we have a lot of crossbows ourselves, it's probably worth it. But this may be a little ways off, because even once we get our first air dudes, our air income's garbage because we have no air mages. So we probably need to send them outside searching some, which sucks. But anyway, this is the life we live. So anyway, that's a nice option, but we won't really be able to do it. Grip of Winter is going to be huge, and Rigor Mortis. Between Grip of Winter and Rigor Mortis, we're going to be able to do major fatigue plays. So anyway, that's a really big deal. I mean, this will just put any other army to sleep. And fortunately, on our Bless, we have +2 Reinvigoration. It also gives us access to Relief, which we can also cast pretty trivially, considering we can jump into Communions. So dropping all of these and then also having Reinvigoration on Bless means we'll put the enemy to sleep and we'll be fine. Right? And if the enemy doesn't have Enchantment 6, because it's not a priority, they can't do Relief, it's going to be extra devastating. So anyway, huge argument to be made for this, for Enchantment 6. Following to Enchantment 7, we still get pretty awesome stuff. We get Um, Ghost Ship Armada might not be horrible here. I don't know what our water income is. But I think there's a lot of coastal area that we don't control. And this could actually be good. Get coastal income. And these guys are pretty solid. Yeah, I might consider it if you rush 7. I mean, it's still like a little janky, but if you have 60 water gems and you don't need to overcast it and the spots aren't filled up, it's pretty possible this could... it's going to piss people off maybe, but... you can just apologize. I don't know if it gives you... I don't know if this lets you trace income through water provinces, so I'm not totally sure. Importantly, though, we get life after death. And for a nation like Vaettiheim, where your mages, a lot of them are going to be really low HP, this is really nice. It's going to prevent like stray things from just outright killing them, like an arrow. So this is really nice. The other thing that's super nice is Serpent's Blessing. We don't have poison resistance in our Bless. And Serpent's Blessing is going to allow us to do Foul Vapors on top of everything else. So now we can do like a major fatigue play, and we can do Foul Vapors. And a lot of our neighbors, except for maybe like Patala, are going to be very susceptible to Foul Vapors. A lot of them. I think there's a very, very strong case for running up to Enchantment 7. Enchantment 8 is also kind of nice just to get the fins and mass regen. But like we're low HP dudes, mass regen is not super great on Vaettiheim. Anyway, I would run up to 7 and stop and go for other things, but that might be my first priority. Next one is going to be Alt 7. The nice thing about Alt 7 for us is it's going to give us Fog Warriors if we can get the Neefel Jarl thing set up. This would probably also require something like Crystal Shield in conjunction with having a Blood-Empowered Neefel Jarl. So kind of janky to get, but something that's definitely possible in the next 10 turns. And just having this with your main stack can make a major difference, especially for things like the Berserkers. Next up we get, Sea of Ice also worth considering, to be honest. It's going to stop sailing. If you go to war with Atlantis, it might be cool to cast that. Bone Grinding is something you can do, but probably not something you want to do as Vaettiheim. And then Mass Protection is so good. You have fire resistance in your Bless. Fire Magic's not going to be great in the cold if you're fighting in the cold, and dropping Mass Protection can be huge. A lot of your guys are also 0 base natural protection, which means they'll get the full benefit of it. So really good. This would be my second target just for Mass Protection. Yeah. Definitely go for it. Also, your neighbors aren't really fire powers. Like, kind of Ulm is, but not really, I don't think, anybody else. So Mass Protection, I would go for it. I think after I have that, the next thing I would probably go for is Evocation. Evocation is going to give you a few interesting things. At Evocation 6, one thing we get with the Neefel Jarls, like Neefel Jarls I think are very key for transitioning into late mid-game Vaettiheim, which is what you need to do right now. And they're going to be really important for late-game Vaettiheim too. But like, a lot of times we think of Neefel Jarls just as super combatants. For you, they're also your air access. And more than just air access, they're air death access, which means you can do Wailing Winds. But you're also a blood power, so you can do Wailing Winds and Blood Rain. So you can do now major fatigue plays, major morale plays. Those are going to be really hard to fight against. So I'd probably run up this to Evo 6. If you want to, you could go 7 to get Winds of Death. The other nice thing with going 7 is you get Murdering Winter, which can be really good to have in the pocket in case you get attacked by a big stack of human mages and they venture into a cold province. It also gives you Stygian Rains, which you may or may not choose to cast. Yeah, I think that's basically it, but that's enough. I would definitely consider going to 7, though I think 6 is a higher priority. So you could totally go 6 and stop. We didn't talk all about all the Vaettiheim magic that they get. They basically get Winter's Call and Illwinter. Illwinter is just Illwinter. Winter's Call lets you get a Neefel Jarl. It's cheap too. 86 slaves. I think these guys have some upkeep, but it's pretty minimal. I don't think it's full Neefel Jarl upkeep, but they're not free in terms of gold. Anyway, super great spell. Super important for Vaettiheim. And, Illwinter's great. There's also an Utgard in this game, and I think if Utgard puts it up, we can also do Winter's Call. That's the most notable spells for Vaettiheim. They also have some things in Conjuration, like Brood of Garm, where you get these Sacred Wolves, which are nice. Definitely not a bad thing to get. We don't really have a Hellbless that's super good on the Wolves, but anyway, it's not a horrible use of Nature Gems. So we've talked about the major research priorities. The one after that, after Evocation, is I'd probably then go all the way up to Blood 8 to get Rush of Strength and Life for Life. These are going to be, and 3 red seconds is nice to have in your pocket too. But these two in particular are the real reason to go Blood 8. The other thing we can potentially do is we can also kind of do Sin Lesser Horror. It's going to be kind of a huge pain in the ass for us. Where is it? Sin Lesser Horror? Because we'd probably, like the Gaijas, you could probably find a Gaija or two that could cast it with not too many boosters. But anyway, it is a pain in the ass, but it's something you could potentially do. That's also good to have in the pocket. So anyway, we've covered all of the magic stuff. Now let's talk about who we should fight. One thing I'd like to do in the mid game is I don't want somebody else getting out of control. And so I'm looking at two things normally, like who is the best player in the game, like who are the best players, which I don't know for this game. I have no idea who's playing what nation, so I'm going to ignore that here. And the second thing I look at is which nations scale really well in the late game. Late age is a really fun age because a lot of nations are really good. I feel like it's the most balanced age. Ulm is super good in the late game, though. And Ulm appears to be very big, because they're at least this big, and we know they're also up here conquering Graga. So I would consider going after Ulm. Ulm is my preferred target, I think, which kind of sucks because it brings you over this way. But what it also does is it puts you in a fantastic position to conquer Patala. Now, what I would try to negotiate for conquering Ulm is I would try to get... there's a little bit of Diplo intrigue that I've been informed of. Ulm has requested that we help him attack Utgard. What I think we should do is tell Utgard that Ulm wants us to attack him, and that we're considering it because Ulm is convinced he can kill him very efficiently, right? And we just want to vulture a little bit. But say we're also, if he's willing to attack Ulm and to put up Illwinter, which I think for us, we're going to put up Illwinter later. I don't think we want the heat from it right now. So I think we let it... It's better to put it up yourself, by the way, because we're going to get Unrest and... we'll get Unrest and potentially attacked by some Indies, which will suck. But I don't know if we have enough Blood Slaves to really do it. I don't know. It's a decision. Having him put it up probably is nice for now, though. I don't know if... I imagine the counter gets reset if it goes back to 0, or, if Utgard gets killed or something. But we might just overcast it. I don't know if the counter gets reset then for how much cold is generated. Anyway. Well, you can ignore the Illwinter advice, but I would see if Utgard wants to attack Ulm, based on the fact that Ulm's trying to get him to attack him, and do this ideally before Raga is completely conquered. The nice thing about that is if Utgard's successful and you're successful, then you can potentially, as long as y'all are still like blood brothers, you can turn your attention south and go after Patala, which would be my next choice. And that would probably leave these two to fight, which is a much more natural war than them trying to attack you, especially into your Mage core. So that's probably what I would try to do. Just looking at the map, that's what seems best. There's always different ways to do it, but now what I want to talk about is if we do go with this plan, which, we could go with a bunch of different plans, but if we do go with the plan of attacking Ulm and then positioning into going for Patala, what would that look like? Well, one is we're going to need a lot of mage support for these armies, so we need to pull... I would probably take at least 6 water randoms of your Vetti Hags, pull them into the army just to be frozen hard spammers. These are going to be pretty good against Ulmish heavy infantry and stuff. and you have a fair amount of them around. The other thing I would do is you're going to need to get your communion set up. Maybe you... do we have temp gems on this one? No temporary gems. I mean, you have water lenses potentially. Anyway, I would get a Doom stack set up that Ulm can't fight. The problem is Ulm may have huge amounts of crossbows, and we know Ulm's armies are up this way, but he may have a lot of crossbows. Where you do want that arrow fin, so I'd work on getting... That's one of the reasons, like, it might be good to go ahead and get Illwinter out, even if Utgard does it, just so you can get Neefel Jarls. Getting those Neefel Jarls is going to be key, because it means you can drop Arrowfin. And wasting an Empower on a air random Neefel Jarl to do Arrowfin is like 100% worth it. Especially if you're going to be fighting in Ulm with Arrowfin. One thing also to not forget and to do is to bring in a few of these death randoms. And you want your death and your water randoms on advance and cast spells, and that will deal with vampire thugs. Because Ulm has some pretty nasty vampire thugs they can do. And so having a few of these death randoms advance and cast spells, they'll be casting dust to dust, and that will basically eliminate that as a threat. So anyway, some water randoms, some death randoms, like probably like 3 or 4 death and like, you know, around 6 water randoms. Have these in your main stack. Then get your communion set up. Now, your communion's probably going to be... The thing is, Ulm is actually kind of an astral powerhouse. So if it's a good player and you're only bringing like a few mages to do, you know, your communions and whatnot, and they're, you know, there's only a handful, like 5 or 6 astral mages, and they know if they kill like 4 of them, they'll completely cripple your communion, then they're going to magic duel you. What I would probably do is bring in a Sabbath communion to fight Ulm. Right, so you're going to need scouts ferrying slaves out. And yeah, you're going to have to bring in a communion to drop all the spells. Now, what are the spells you want to drop in a fight against Ulm? We mentioned, you know, Arrowfin would be a luxury, but we're going to do the full fatigue play, Rigor Mortis, Grip of Winter, and Relief, right? We're going to drop that. Where we anticipate our army going to, we might consider... Our water income is not great, which is unfortunate. But especially if you see an army coming in, so maybe get a few more scouts out here. If you see an army coming in and you know there's going to be a big fight next turn, or like in a turn or two, try to cast... So, like, let's say there's a big army here, and I'm going for this. So I know next turn this big army is going to move from here to here, right? And I, for whatever reason, I think they're going to go here, right? And I'm going to move my army here. Well, like, cast Wolven Winter here to go ahead and turn the cold scales. Right? Here you can see it's already cold tree, but you get what I'm saying. Like, have a Wolven Winter ready to go. And that's going to make the fatigue play more effective. So you're going to be doing the fatigue play. By this time, with this higher research, within like 2 or 3 turns, you only need to get to Enchantment 6, right? So within 2 turns, you'll be Enchantment 6. And then within 1 to 2 turns after that, you'll be Alteration 7. Because you're going to have some rollover from the previous one. So like within 4 turns, definitely you'll be Alt 7, if those are your priorities. Forget Conjuration here. Right? So once you have that, you're going to be ready to fight. Now, one thing to point out is... Ulm, potentially, there's things they can do that are going to completely wreck you. One of them is Firestorm, which this is early enough for Ulm to potentially have Firestorm, but I doubt they will cast it. Right? I just want to throw it out that it's an option, and you could get completely wrecked by it. The other thing is if they have a big crossbow stack, and they have flaming arrows, and you have mass protection up, it's probably not going to be great. It's probably not going to be great. So I'm just putting that out there. One thing that can help with fire magic in general is just putting rain up, right? It's something that I would do. Like the risk of fire magic with Ulm is so big, I would plan on having a water 2. Like, get one of your water 2s, give them a water lens, and every single turn you need to drop rain. And I forget what, I think you have it already, but I'm not sure yet. You can do it 1 water lens, 1 water 2, every fight, first turn cast rain. that's going to potentially mess up some of their casting, because some of the mages won't cast with rain up where they would normally cast like a battlefield enchantment for fire. And it's also going to make the effects of, burning stuff not so bad. Fire is going to be a major weakness against Ulm. Once you have Alt 7, I would go Enchant 6, Alt 7, then I would come down for Enchant 7. Once you have Enchant 7, then you can start doing Foul Vapors on Ulm. All right, and that's going to be very effective. Now, Ulm can potentially do Serpent's Blessing because they have Fortune Tellers, but again, depending on the player's skill and how much they're anticipating what their research is, they're probably not expecting that, right? So you're probably going to get some mileage out of adding that to the mix. But make sure you get Serpent's Blessing up, otherwise you will chew through your own dudes. And you'll probably still lose a few, because some damage does, in all honesty, trickle through Serpent's Blessing. So you may even add it a little later to the script, so if it's just like a small little fight, like a gym bait or something, you don't accidentally Foul Vapor yourself. Right, so you could put it on slot like 3, 4, or 5. And that way it will more likely only go off in a major combat. So, that's most of the fight with Ulm. Yeah, that's most of the fight with Ulm. I'm going to move real quick. I realize I'm running low on battery. I need to plug in. Okay. That is the fight with Ulm. Now, let's say this fight goes well. You'll then transition into attacking Patala. We're not going to be talking about that specifically, but to fight Patala, you definitely need Serpent's Blessing. What I want to spend the rest of the video talking on, and I've actually recorded this twice now. The first time I messed it up, and well, I'm recording on a different computer, and blah blah blah. Is my thing not charging? 1 second. All right, it should be charging. And blah blah blah. It recorded black screen the whole time because I'm recording on this laptop anyway. So anyway, I've got my talking points down a bit more. The next thing we want to talk about here is defending. And if Midgard attacks you, which I know this player is worried about, like, oh, I might get elfed, there's a few things you need to think about. One, like, this is a blood hunting operation, and these guys are completely unscripted. Your blood hunting operations should be very well fortified. And it's one of the reasons that it makes sense to do like more than 2 people blood hunting. Like even when you just get 3, that means you can start doing Sabbaths. And Sabbaths can really mess up thugs. So, like even here, like if we could script it, we could make these 2 guys slaves, Sabbath slaves. And we're in a lab, so we just give them some slaves. We can make these guys masters. Then we can have them spam mind burn or something, right? We can have these guys make Horde of Skeletons, which I'll probably do off script anyway. And then this guy do advance and cast spells to do... I forget. Frozen Heart. This guy can jump in the Communion. He can do personal regen on these guys so that they don't die of, HP damages easily. And he could go advance and cast spells or something, I don't know. Anyway, once you get Blood 8, you can also set up Life for Life in your blood hunting areas. So yeah, I'd try to get... One thing too, just while we're talking about blood hunting, is these guys, yeah, they're great at researching. You have 20 RP on these. Don't think because they're good at researching you have to. Like, your research is phenomenal. And once you start checking off these things like Alt 7, Enchantment 7, and Evocation 6, don't think you have to be like winning the research game anymore. You've already gotten there, right? You've won the research game by hitting your good timings. Right? After that, like, sure, you should keep researching, but you're going to keep researching. Take these guys out of the lab, make them go blood hunt. Right? Get some serious blood economy going.
If all these guys were blood hunting, you could have such a big blood economy. Now, it's probably, until you hit this critical research, it might make sense to keep them in the lab, all right? But once they're out, like once that critical research is done, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking like, oh, I have to win the game to like finish all research, and you keep mages locked up in the lab too long. It is time to break some of these mages free very shortly, send them in armies, and send them to provinces to blood hunt. So, and the more mages you have in provinces that are blood hunting, scripted to deal with thugs, the much, like, you're going to be very invulnerable to raiding. And yeah, you know, the other thing is, if you expect you're getting elfed, having a guy just doing like one of these guys patrolling all your forts or something on advance and cast spells with like a little bit of chaff in front, you know, that frozen heart can kill the thug. So maybe not now, but if you're really worried about Midgard doing that, I would consider it. Next up, we need to talk about one of the other strengths of Vaettiheim, which is super combatants. You've already got some frost devils. There's one here. And frost devils are great super combatants. This guy is a magic phase super combatant, which is really good for you to have. So you need to throw a Starshine Skullcap on him. So I'd go ahead and forge that. You know, forge a Starshine Skullcap here. Throw this on him. And get him... You need to start making some gear for him, too. Get your super combatant gear. I'm not going to go through and explain all the gear to put on these guys, but give him the super combatant gear. He can then magic phase around and jump on things that you think he can kill. But, you know, potentially if you're Twiceborn Factory, which he's already been doing, if this works out, then you can take some of the tarts that you get from this, and you can use them as super combatants too. And one of the things you can do pretty well is you have pretty good point buffing. With just Astral doing Body Ethereal, and then Moss Body's really good. And then your super combatants you're going to get are going to have these paths too. So they can do like Stygian Flesh, which isn't great, or like with the gem, they can do Invulnerability Soul Vortex, which is really good. They can also, with the gem, like do Personal Regen. So, and they can also, well, you won't with the tart, but they also could potentially do like Enlarge or something, or Quicken Self, or Liquid Body. There's a bunch of things they can do, especially when they're also getting fluffed, right? So you have very, you know, pretty good, not like excellent because you're missing Earth, and Earth's really important for super combatants, but you have pretty damn solid buffing that you can do on top of your tarts when you bring a fluffer. Another comment on this Twiceborn setup you have. Just one nice thing is that you control Mother Oak, so great. One thing, though, is you've got these guys and you're now like, okay, I'm not going to do it again because, you know, they got whatever, and then you're just going to keep them in a lab. Keep Twiceborning these. I mean, keep transforming these guys. You can still do it when they're a wolf, and you just see what you get. And there's a chance every time you do transformation to get another magic pass. So I just keep doing that, see what you get, and before you know it, you'll be in good shape. But yeah, you have a ton of these guys just sitting around, right? And think about it, you've wasted the Twiceborn gems. So I would go ahead and just keep, especially if you've got the nature gems, just, you know, keep them doing that. And if you know, you can also, since well, I guess these guys are, well, they're not that cheap. You know, if you want to, you can just Twiceborn them, if you have extra death gems, Twiceborn them and just sacrifice them underwater or something, you know? Or find some way to kill them. Once you get Neefel Jarls, your Neefel Jarls are obviously going to be really good super combatants. So they just add to the overall super combatant game. So yeah, that's going to be a cool thing. And the next thing I want to talk about is the thrones. You need to be getting both these thrones like within the next... that would be, before I worry about fight, I would start Diplo with Utgard, get ready to attack Ulm. Like, you're going to have to move a lot of your mages from down here up here before you'll be ready. Like, your main stack should have at least 20 mages in it, okay? And a lot of those are going to be Sabbaths, right? You know, Sabbath Communion. You need to get guys in position to kill this. You know, potentially you get this guy to come over here and take this throne out. Just make sure you have lightning resistance, shock resistance to deal with the Spring Hawks. Like a Storm Spool will work. you could get Blessed 2 on your first turn. I don't know if... You have 15 shock resistance. That'll be enough. You don't need it. Just make sure you do Blessing turn 1. Oh, he doesn't have that. So he'll need a Storm Spool. He's not sacred. This one you're going to need a lot of fire resistance to deal with this guy. He's probably going to spam fire elementals at you, and then you're going to have all the fire snakes. But with enough fire resistance, you'll probably be fine here. So, I don't know. You could get another Frost Demon or something, send him down here. But you need to get both these pretty shortly. One of the reasons you need to get them is that these are probably both level 2 thrones. And there's a few really good level 2 thrones for you. This one's really good for Rim Vetti, and then the water income would be great. This would almost double your water income, which is huge for you. The Crystal Throne would be the best for you, just to give you access to solid Earth Mages. That would be the best. And then I think everything else for the level 2s is kind of okay. The Throne of Death would be nice, more Twiceborns. But anyway, you need to get them just to roll the dice. Hope you get a good level 2 throne. So yeah, I would get the thrones within the next 2 to 3 turns. Then I'd prepare to attack Ulm, ideally with Utgard as an accomplice. And he basically divide it this way, right? And you get everything below, he gets everything above. So I would sell Utgard. He comes through here and attacks on both fronts, right? And he gets all this stuff. The good thing is he'll probably take a lot of the heavier fighting, especially since Ulm's armies are up here. And if Utgard pushes through, he'll be pretty close to like Ulm's capital. I'm not sure where it is. Or maybe Ulm's capital's down here. I don't know. Either way, I think Utgard will probably take a bit of the heavier part. We're going to close this out by talking about what late-game Vaettiheim should look like. Late-game Vaettiheim, you should have a huge blood economy. I'd be aiming for like 200 blood slaves a turn. It's going to give you a lot of Neefel Jarls. Ideally, you get your Earth income up, right? So your site searching has been really good for the paths you have, but you don't really have much for paths you don't have. So like Earth is completely missing, Air is completely missing. So ideally, and Fire is missing, right? Fire, I think you're going to be really slow to remedy, but at least Earth, you really need to remedy Earth and Air. Which really means you need somebody to cast Illwinter, because there's not going to be another real way to quickly fix Air. Like this guy, your hero, can go out and site search, but it's going to be a long way. So yeah, you need Neefel Jarls to go either spam Auspex, because you have a fair amount of Air gems built up. That's probably what I would do, is like get an Air booster and spam out Auspex, right? And then if you get more Air randoms and you don't have more Air boosters, have them walk around and site search manually. You need to get your Air income up some, because you're going to need to Air empower at least one of your Neefel Jarls so they can magic phase attack. And then you're going to blood empower the ones that are going to be casters in your army. But you really need that Air. That Air is going to be really important. Yeah, so late game Vaettiheim. What are we looking at? We're looking at huge fatigue plays, right? Like crazy fatigue plays. We are looking at like nasty morale plays with Wailing Winds and Blood Rain. We're looking at Rush of Strength on our armies, giving that +4 strength to everybody. That's going to partially make up for some of the Earth problems. And we're looking at like really strong super combatants with good point buffing. We're looking at Illwinter up, right? So that's going to be a massive income swing for you. And we're looking at pretty strong communions with a lot of kind of chaffy mage support. The things that are going to kind of wreck you are going to be things like Flames from the Sky. It's probably one of the worst things for Vaettiheim. But there's really not much you can do about that, except don't be too passive and don't wait for like Flames of the Sky to come online. Because like Flames of the Sky from the Sky on a Doomstack is just horrible, horrible, horrible for you. Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of the late game Vaettiheim stuff, like tons of Neefel Jarls. You can also, one thing you can look to do is get some Storm Demons, especially once you get Blood 9. Empower a Neefel Jarl, because they'll be your Air Mage, or empower, or she can do it. Hell, just have her make Storm Demons every turn with like the Blood 9 version. You can also do Fiends of Darkness if you're rolling in Blood Slaves and don't feel like making more Needful Jarls. So yeah, late game Vaettiheim is pretty strong. It's pretty ridiculous. With Illwinter plus like a really good blood economy, plus like blood summonable Needful Jarls. Yeah, dude. Anyway, I think I've covered all the things I wanted to. I hope I covered everything to entertain the viewers and everything to help you out with this. Maybe some other things. Make sure you're doing your army positioning, like I mentioned at the beginning. Spread your guys out unless you're doing point buffing. You can definitely do stealthy raiders in here with Ulm. Yeah, so anyway, that's something you can do. Potentially look, let's see if you have any lesser horror casters here. I don't see any Astral 2s. The thing is that if they're not Astral 2, it's going to take a stone coin, a crystal coin to get them. So yeah, no Astral 2s, but I don't know. Yeah, and your Earth Income, you're probably not going to be doing Sun Lesser Horror. But yeah, I think you're pretty well set up. The important thing, though, is you can go on a major offensive with an army and a few thugs and some light raiding parties, maybe the Wolf Riders or something. Right? You can have all that going on over here, and then you use your mages and super combatants to defend. That's probably how I would think about it. And with that, I will leave you. So, good luck to you, and take care.